Hey everybody, Objectively Dan here, and I want to talk about the growing divide that's happening in the church when it comes to immigration. As new border policies take effect, some Christian groups are calling for compassion and sanctuary, while others are demanding stricter enforcement in the name of law and order. So I have to ask, what does it really mean to welcome the stranger in today's political climate? Let's talk about it, because the show is starting right now. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Truth Wanted. I am your host, Objectively Dan. This is the live call-in show that happens every single week, Fridays at 7 p.m. Central Time, where we talk to people about what they believe and why. And if you'd like to call us, you can do that right now. The lines are open. It is 512-991-9242, or you can call through your computer at tiny.cc/calltw. And as always, Truth Wanted is a product of the atheist community of Austin, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. And every single week, I always try to have a special guest. This week is no different. It is JL Warren back on the pod today. Pod show? We're a podcast, I guess.
It's a show, yeah.
It's a show. Hey, it's like this gets posted to YouTube and to Spotify and to a bunch of places, and it's like I guess that makes it a podcast, but I don't think about it that way. I don't know why. I guess because we're like a live show. I think of it more
like a live show. Yeah.
Okay, and I also don't want to be another white guy with a podcast. I'll be honest with you. I feel like
that hits me where it hits me because I was a white guy with a podcast.
Like it's a thing. It's a thing, and I get embarrassed when I talk to people about it because I'm like, oh yeah, I do it anyway. It's a thing. But anyway, JL Warren, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. How you been?
I'm good. Just got back from vacation, just kind of like getting back into the swing of doing work, chasing that algorithm. But just excited to be here. I know it's been a minute, but I think I can help out.
I think you can. Way, I want to talk about. Can we talk about your vacation, by the way? Because you like, I don't know how much you want to get into it, but like, you told me some stories about what you were up to, and man, that sounds like an awesome vacation. I'll just say that.
So I can nutshell it for you. So my wife and I wanted to take a vacation, and it just happened to coincide with our discovery of this treasure hunt that's currently going on in the western United States, and we got kind of hooked on that. So we've been exploring that, but we wanted to we found a way to kind of like blend the two together. So we spent 10 days up in Montana, based out of the Beaverhead Deer Lodge area. Wisdom, if anybody's familiar with that, we explored everywhere from Wise River all the way to Dillon, and all the way up through the scenic byway. For anybody who's ever been out there, it's gorgeous, gorgeous country. We had took the dogs with us, had a blast. Didn't find anything, but the memories and the photos and the experiences are fantastic. All kinds of cool stuff. Saw bald eagles in the wild. Saw wolves. Didn't see any bears, apparently, but it was an absolute blast.
Well, like a vacation centered around a treasure hunt is awesome. I just gotta say, I'm jealous. I am jealous. I would like to do something like that on myself, and of course, one of my lights dies as soon as we're in the middle of the show, which I will fix in just a second. But yeah, no, I am jealous. Good for you. Good for you for doing that and living your best life. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. So on that note, you guys have commented and talked about our question of the week, which is a question that we ask you guys, or we want the truth segment, as we call it. Last week, we asked you guys complete the sentence. If I were a ghost, I'd blank just to fuck with people. And Kelly is going to be joining us here to give us our answer. Sorry, Kelly, I kind of took your job for a second there because I read last week's question.
No, that's cool.
But
that's cool. I defer to you. You are the creative producer of the show.
Oh my fucking God. I swear to God. We're a couple minutes in. I can say fuck, right? I think so. Anyway,
yeah, we're 2 minutes in.
I'm the producer, right? I get to say it. No, anyway, not going to go into it. Kelly, don't use that language. Okay.
Okay. I won't.
No, see, now you're doing it because oh my God. All right, shut up.
Since we were screwing around, I'm going to repeat it. Complete this sentence. If I were a ghost, I'd blink just to fuck with people. And here are our favorite answers. Number 3 from the amazing, incredible Chuck Gatos. If I were a ghost, instead of scaring the homeowners away, I'd just watch Casper cartoons until they couldn't afford their cable bill.
That's pretty good, Chuck. That's pretty good.
That's a pretty good one. That's pretty creative.
We need to give Chuck a title, right? Yeah, I think the honorable is pretty good. The honorable Chuck is because Chuck does. I mean, our most frequent commenter, right? MVP.
He does get a lot of his comments chosen because he's pretty damn creative and funny. I'll give him that.
And consistent. Gotta say.
Number 2 from the real Uncle Freaky, not the fake Uncle Freaky, but the real one. If I was a ghost, I would happily wander the earth for eternity, haunting people watching religious content by switching it to ACA content. And that's the truth.
Wow, free advertising. That's great.
Good for you.
Yeah, that's some volunteer work, I'd say. Afterlife volunteer work.
Supernatural volunteer.
Yeah, I like that. Well, thanks for that dedication. I hope there's an afterlife just so you could do that, you know? But all right, what's our number 1, Kelly?
Our number 1 is from the most incredible Miranda Rensberger. Right? I mean, she is the most incredible.
I agree.
If I were a ghost, I would fuck with people by making the Ouija board spell out things like, "This is your grandpa. My secret Swiss bank account number is," and then just disappear.
That's awesome. That's so good. Man, so you guys are very big trolls. I can see that, commenters. So thank you for your creative. Thank you for putting your creative writing into action here, because I don't know, that would be pretty funny if it happened in real life. I gotta say, like, imagine you get that on camera with like the ghost hunters and stuff. Oh man. So
you know, if you guys ever decide to bring back the board for another Halloween episode.
Yeah.
Hey.
It is Friday the 13th, by the way. Friday the 13th. So there's maybe some spooky shenanigans today. I don't know. I'm saying that as if we planned something. We didn't, but there could always be something out there. You never know, right?
You never know. And, well, there is something out there. It's the prompt for next week.
Oh, great segue. Huh?
Holy nice. Nicely done.
Good job.
Nicely done.
Wrong answers only. What should the title of Jesus's autobiography be? JL, you got an idea?
I think I do. I think the title of Jesus's autobiography would be Fear and Loathing in Capernaum.
Ooh, that's a good one.
That's bad.
That's a strong one. Holy shit, that's really good. Mine was so hacky. I was just gonna say Nailed. That should be the name. and like, come on, that'd be a bestseller, right? Like, it's just called Nailed. Like, I don't know. Anyway,
yeah, that would be a good bestseller. So, you know, put your comments or put your answers in the comments below, not in the chat on the side. We need them below.
What's the matter, Kelly? You don't got one? You don't got one?
Oh, do you want me to have one? I didn't know I was supposed to have one.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't think about it. So I really like Nailed. That's pretty good. Walking on Water.
Okay. All right.
That seems like it. That just popped into my head. And that way he's like pushing his abilities, right? Like, hey,
I can see it.
Look at this, one of the high points of my life, right?
Walking on Water does like sound like a very I can see it, like a celebrity pastor.
It's not funny, but I think it would be a good answer.
Title. Yeah, I can see it. Okay, all right, fair enough.
All right, so you know, like I said, everybody, we want to hear from you. Put your comments below, and we will read out the top 3 again next week, and hopefully one of them will be yours.
Perfect. Thank you, Kelly. Appreciate you. And we'll get back to the show. Like you said, here with JL Warren today. Just hanging out, having a good time, waiting for folks to call. We have open lines at the moment. But I did start this show with a cold open about immigration. Again, you don't have to call in about whatever we talk about. You call in about whatever we want. But I don't know. JL, there's a lot of stuff, let's say, happening in the world right now when it comes to topic, to say the least.
Yeah, we live in interesting times.
Interesting times.
We do.
Yeah, that's true. I guess my approach to this is, look, like Christians have been both against and for immigration at different times and have cited the Bible for different reasons. And like, it just, you know, we always talk about this, like the Bible's kind of whatever you want it to be. But I do feel like if you add up all the verses that say one way or the other, I do think the Bible is like pretty pro immigration, sort of come as you are. Jesus unironically was an immigrant, was an asylum seeker. I fully contest. Now I don't contest that point. I think that's true. So I don't know. It does seem weird to me I guess when people have the reactions that they do to people that are here, I don't know.
I can't get over the Bible's consistent message of rules for me and not for thee. There's a consistency there that is somewhat disturbing, and I think that they would be that going from a biblical perspective. I see that there's kind of a pro-immigration stance there, and only so that it applies to certain groups of people.
Yes.
These are the people you want to have immigrating. These are the people you don't want to have immigrating. So it's both. I mean, I can see how you can interpret it either way, but there's a consistent, like I said, rules for me and not for thee kind of like thing going on there. And
that's true.
So.
No, you bring up a good point because, from my understanding, and again, I'm not a scholar, right? But Judaism, talking about ancient Judaism, even before the Bible was written, right? When we're talking about the Samaritan groups and stuff, right? There's definitely an ethnocentrism to the religion, and I'm not picking on Jewish people. That's that was most religions at the time, right? But that kind of has not held over because of Christianity. But it has stuck around with Judaism itself. Most Jewish people are also ethnically Jewish. There's a tie there, but we don't call people ethnically Christian for that reason, right? There's sort of a more openness there. So I think a lot of the verses reflect that, where when they say the Jews are God's chosen people, they really mean it. That they are the ones who are special amongst everybody else. And that's ethnocentric. What can you say, right? Obviously there's been persecution and stuff. I'm not saying that they're supremacists in that regard necessarily, but there is sort of a I'm better than you kind of thing. I mean, if you're God's chosen people, it's implied that some of us aren't. Right.
That's what I think. I can't. Not to get into that. I think there's a lot of hypocrisy. Like I said, going on. We can't go. Like I said, it is
difficult to talk about. But it's interesting.
But to see it applies to us, but it doesn't apply to you because we have this ethnocentric kind of take on this whole thing, and I think because of that lack of clarity, I suppose, or because it is so, ethnically centered on the Jewish people, that you're going to get these different kinds of interpretations. I think it's ultimately is what led to a great deal of the conflict that we see in the modern day, that are just extensions of what was going on back before the tome was written. So
right. I agree with that. And so I think that applies to Old Testament, right? But New Testament, it gets kind of interesting because there's all kinds of debates about what it even means to be a Christian and how much it has to tie into Jewish law and stuff, right? And a whole argument, one of the biggest fights in the New Testament is Paul and Peter talking about the Jews and the Gentiles and stuff, being able to be Christians and stuff that's kind of an interesting through thought. And so I think some of the people that are pro-immigrant on the Christian side sort of cite some of these New Testament ideas of acceptance and being welcoming of the stranger and talking about the Good Samaritan and stuff, right? So I don't know. Once again, the Bible playing both sides, so it always comes out on top.
Right. Exactly. So it's heads I tail. It's heads I win, tails you lose. It's always been that, and that was the Morton's fork that always stuck out to me. Even when I was young and didn't know how to articulate that, it always seemed very much like it's just, we win no matter what, and that always bothered me, and it was probably one of the initial kind of intuitions that led to my eventual deconstruction and deconversion. So.
Right. Yeah, I don't know if I had much more to say on the subject other than that. The Bible plays both sides, right? I mean, there's support for it both ways. I wish more Christians were more supportive of their fellow man, but you know what? Recently, the track record, at least for the evangelical right, isn't really it's not really there. I don't know. It's not really happening. So
I don't see. I would. The thing that boggles my mind is that speaking, in this contemporary setting, the one thing that bothers the hell out of me is that both groups don't seem to be able to see that. I mean, we have a lot of no true Scotsmen going on. Okay, it's like we're interpreting it correctly, you're not interpreting it right, back and forth like this. But no one, I don't see anybody who's like heavily involved in those standing up and saying, hey, okay, hang on a second. How are we interpreting this? What's the deal? Like how are we coming to this? How could we be looking at the exact same source or, like the variations of the source and coming away with two radically different conclusions? Like, how is this happening? And no one that I've seen so far, other than the people outside of us, people like, that do the work that we do, are pointing out is like, there might be a problem with the source material. Have you considered the logical possibility that the problem is not you, the problem is the source material itself? But that goes into questioning the very foundation of much of their worldview. So you have to be willing, and that's the work I like to do, is you have to be willing to ask those questions and teach other people that it's okay to ask those questions, especially when they don't make sense. Ignore Proverbs 3:5. That's nonsense.
Right.
Go. Try to understand it. Apply your reasoning.
No, you bring up a great point because we had a caller who called in a few weeks ago who was deconstructing. I think openly said so, and they were like, "Well, I think I thought of a way that I could make like Noah's Ark work. Basically, what about like this argument?" And all I asked was just, why are we even considering that any of this is real at all? Why do we even go that far? And like, I'm not saying that it stumped him, but he just kind of didn't have an answer. And he was like really curious about that. And he enjoyed that conversation, but I was like, yeah, my Christianity, the one I grew up with, definitely didn't teach that kind of thinking. It was never, hey, what if this source material just isn't right? It's, oh no, we have to figure out how to make this verse work with this verse, and
the kicker that got me, that really, really struck me, and this is not to throw any shade at individuals like Justin over Deconstruction Zone or a number of other individuals who really dive into the theology and know what they're talking about, who have the scholarship behind it, and they do really fantastic work. I myself, in my studies, pretty much came to understand that the whole field of theology, why are we even addressing it at all? Like the entire thing, whether your exegetical understanding, your hermeneutical understanding, the Bible in and of itself, all the things that these things are centered around is this God concept. And if the God concept itself doesn't exist, much like they would say about, like, say, Islam, they would say like Allah is not a God that exists, not a version of the God that exists. So therefore the Quran is, it's superfluous. We don't need to look at it. But if you consider that about any particular God, if that God doesn't exist, then the theology that's built up around it, the collection of post and ad hoc rationalizations, everything, is completely irrelevant. So we need to address the existence category first. We need to address that on its merits. And if we can't determine if it does, why are we getting mired in the bog of theology and other theological arguments? I understand a lot of people, they live there and they want to have those conversations, but I was like, why are we addressing this? Who cares what two people in the Bible at a particular point had an argument about, or whatever Jesus said? If the God doesn't exist, then it's just another book. So we need to be able to address that first. That's kind of where it's probably going to get me some hot water saying that, because
no, I think you're right. This is another thing that Christianity does. I think it splits people's ideas up into false dichotomies. It really does. It's like, oh, well, either this can be true about the Bible, this interpretation can be true, or this interpretation can be true. Or how about none of this is true because the Bible isn't a coherent text and wasn't meant to ever be a coherent text. This is from different authors at different time periods with different opinions, right? Like, but that's never an option. So yeah, that's something that I didn't consider. And I think, like you, and I kind of understood the Bible more, and I understood, oh, this is just a series of blog posts basically from different people. Like that made way more sense to me. Suddenly, oh, I don't have to figure out why this happened here and this happened here and this says this and this is like, because it doesn't matter. It didn't didn't connect in the first place,
That struck me really, really hard when I was, like decades ago, and I was trying to understand is like, why am I putting so much? Why is there being? So I'm committing so much energy to trying to derive some level of truth from this, and I'm only getting one perspective. Just like the Bible itself is simply one frame of reference. It's one perspective on history from one very, very scientifically ignorant and say not I would say very, very superstitious people. And so these individuals, they cobble together what they've got, and then you see the reflections of geopolitical change throughout time as these things move on, and you can see that reflected in the book. And so I couldn't see how to do it. So I went to addressing the God thing. That seems to be the keystone to the whole pyramid here. Just take that one out, the whole thing falls apart. So just so much easier.
It's true.
So for that.
I agree. But maybe folks at home, you disagree. Maybe you think that we're just blind and we're full of folly or whatever verbiage you want.
I have been told that my position is because you're just afraid to take on the Bible. It's like, I can take on the Bible.
Yeah.
I just don't think it's necessary. I think we'd much rather go after the God. Let's talk about that category. Let's talk about that concept. And then if I can debunk it, then I just
That's an interesting perspective as well. I think you can do both.
You can. I prefer not to take the long way round.
That's fair. It's like, listen, I don't need to read all of the Quran to know that Islam probably isn't real, right? Like, it's like, I just need some bits and pieces. I can just be like, I don't think this religion is actually true. I don't know. I didn't have to do that. But folks who deconstruct might have to because they grow up with that, right? So as former Christians, we might feel more privileged position for the Bible, but we really don't have to, On that note, we should get to some callers because there are some people waiting to talk to us. You ready to go, JL?
I am ready.
All right, let's do that. But before we go, folks, we have to thank the patrons of the week because every single week we are thanking the folks who donate to our Patreon. I want to give a shout out to everybody that donates on that Patreon. But this week's patron of the week is going to be Kelly Evan. Thank you so much, Kelly Evan. And thank you to everybody that donates. You guys are amazing. And you know what I forgot to do, JL? I forgot because I said we have a challenge today. We're bringing it back, folks. A few weeks ago, we had a super chat challenge for just random facts. Okay. And as the call happens, we won't do mid-word, but like if somebody does a super chat, we will stop mid-sentence to give a random fact. I'll go first, I guess, and then you can do it, and then we can go back and forth on that maybe. So JL's down. He says he's willing. Yeah.
I'm flipping the mental Rolodex. I can pull some stuff up.
He can do it. I'm sure he's got some fun facts. So if you want to hear his fun facts, give a super chat today, and we will give some fun facts. Kelly says we should call them fun truths. So we should call them that, I guess. The fun truths.
Fun truths.
Yes, I'm down for that. Let's get to our first caller. We have Maggie calling from Canada. Maggie, welcome to Truth Wanted. What's going on?
Not a whole lot. How are you guys today?
Doing great, Maggie. Thanks so much for calling the show. Appreciate it. How can we help you?
So I am an atheist, and I have a question about an argument I heard for the afterlife, and I wasn't really sure how to respond to it. Some friends and I, we're doing a very Canadian thing. We're out, having a kayak canoe trip up north. And they were talking about afterlife, and one of the fellows there brought up an argument about two babies talking in the womb, and how one of them was saying, I guess they were twins, one of them was saying how he thought this was all there is, so they should just live it up and, do whatever they're doing in there. And the other baby was saying, well, no, I think there's more after this. And of course, then they're born, and the second baby was right. So ergo equal, there's an afterlife.
Yeah. This is Pascal's wager. Have you ever heard of Pascal's wager before, Maggie?
I have, and that's what I thought. It's pretty simple.
Right.
Way of looking at things. But I honestly just did not know how to respond to this.
Yeah, I mean, JL, you look like you're dying to respond to this.
I mean, it's really simple. I mean, I have a tendency to go a little bit long in the kind of description, like who Blaise Pascal was. He was a kid, he was born and raised a Catholic, and he was a mathematician, philosopher, stuff like that. But the wager in and of itself automatically falls flat for a number of reasons. But it's predominantly Pascal failed on that because he was assuming there was only one possible God, that there was this one God that existed, and the framework that was built around that God was what was true. The problem with the wager is that it ignores all logical possible other gods and other possible afterlives that follow along with those gods. And so it's utilizing fear, the fear of the hell thing, in order to reinforce the kind of like push to accept this thing is true, because you might lose out. And he was trying to use his understanding of mathematics to kind of like reinforce that, but his starting position was completely fallacious. There's no point going forward with that. And like I said, Pascal, I can see why he went there, but there's a lot of problems with it.
Yeah, I mean, for many of us, the atheist position isn't necessarily, I don't think an afterlife exists, right? Or it's definitely not real. It's we don't know, right? That's also fine as well. And I think that's the most honest thing you can say. I can point to like, well, I have a physical body, and like, that seems to be, my conscious experience seems to be reflective of my material world. So if I get my head hit, I'm going to like have a different personality, or if, something else happens to me that seems to affect who I am. So there's something that ties me to material world that makes me skeptical of it. But by and large, like, JL said, there's multiple ideas about the afterlife. Maybe one of us could be right about it, but like, unless we have a way to really evaluate that, it's kind of pointless. There's no real reason to pick one over the other.
The thing that gets me about the analogy, or I guess the example that you were given, or the argument, it wasn't even really an argument, but the thing that you were given was, you have two entities, you have two agents that are in an enclosed system, and they are working with the information that they have. If one of the babies says, I think that this is all there is, because they're in the womb, and then you have the other one saying, no, I think that there's something beyond this. Well, it's really malformed, because you have one who is, all they have is the information they have to go off of. Well, where is one getting information from to justify their claim that there is something beyond that? They must be getting information from somewhere, and they're making a claim about there being something else. Well, if the other one's not getting the information, then obviously there's a break somewhere. So the question would be, well, where are you getting the information to tell you that there's something after this? Well, I'm hearing noises outside, or light occasionally, or whatever, something of that nature. But those questions are never answered. That's why it's weird little arguments like that, or like little examples like that are worded specifically to bake you into a corner. And I've never found them very, very helpful, because the minute you start asking questions, they start falling apart. The minute you that's why critical inquiry is so important. And I'm pretty sure that you're very much aware of that. That like the minute you start poking at it, it falls apart like tissue paper. So you can always, whenever you go to dive into those, whenever someone presents something, never be afraid to inquire, get more details, you know?
Because if they're going to spread propaganda, you might as well too, or at least give some room for discussion. But I don't know, Maggie, we've been talking for a while. What do you think?
Well, yeah, and I agree with what JL said, because that's where my mind went. Is like, what are their points of reference? Because they have nothing to go by. I guess besides, you did bring up noises outside, but that's kind of what I thought. I said, to myself, like, what are they basing their opinion even on?
Right.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It was like, need more data. Yeah,
because I guess maybe I was shocked. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like it doesn't follow. Obviously, I get that, but yeah, we need more data is what it is. We need more data, so we need to make sure that we don't. It's
hard. Yeah, that's first of all, that's a great T-shirt, JL.
Thank you.
Say, for those who are listening in the audio, he has a shirt that says "That wasn't very data-driven of you," which is fantastic. Gotta say, 10 out of 10. But yeah, Maggie, it's hard because it's like you don't want to be that person, in the social situation that starts a whole debate, right? And maybe they just meant it as a one-off, but maybe that person is looking for a debate and that's why they said it. So I don't know. It kind of goes both ways. You got to kind of read the room with these things, right? But
I'll always be that person.
JL's gonna be that guy. JL's gonna be that guy. I'm not saying you have to be that guy, Maggie or girl or whatever you identify as. I'm just saying, there's a stereotype for the atheist community for a reason. and
I left my fedora somewhere.
Yeah, I don't know. But isn't it annoying when you're kind of right or better than some people in the room and you kind of have to pretend like you don't? I don't know. It's one of those things, right? Because that's definitely that's like a boomer Facebook meme of like two babies like in the womb. I don't know. That's what that makes me think of. But yeah.
But I didn't really want to start an argument at the time because we were out in the middle of nowhere for 3 days.
Right.
So
that's another good point because you were kayaking up in the north in Canada, and you know what? You need to stay secure to your lifelines. I get it.
Yeah. They'll say, you don't believe in afterlife. We're going to let you drown over there.
Yeah, we're gonna have to meet the afterlife. You're about to find out, right? Yeah, I could see that happening too. So
thanks very much. I didn't want to take up too much of your time, but I've just been thinking about it but I like that. I'm going to go re-look up Pascal's wager and make sure I have it all straight in my head now.
Perfect.
Absolutely.
We love it. Well, great call, Maggie. Anything else you want to ask us or tell us before we let you go?
No, that's everything. I've been watching your show, Dan, for quite a long time, and this is the first time I've called in, so yeah.
Yes, I love that, Maggie. Thanks for calling in. Oh, that makes me happy. I hope you got what you needed, and it sounds like JL was the perfect guest. So there you go. She liked your answer. I did too, actually, because I can't even add to it. What am I supposed to say? Yeah, he was wrong. It's not a good epistemology.
It's not. It's bad. Yeah, it's really really bad. So, and I'm shocked because I've looked at you. You look at like the body of Pascal's work. It's kind of like there's some impressive stuff in there.
Oh, he's brilliant. Yeah,
but like I said, just because you're an expert in one field doesn't make you an expert in all fields.
It's one of those things where it's like, so I guess I'm you use this on any religion, right? I guess I'm going to a Hindu hell, or I guess I'm going to Hindu. It's like when you actually think about it from any other perspective besides Christianity, like I think you immediately realize the pitfalls of this thinking. But we are in a very Christian-centric society, and I think this kind of reasoning works on people, unfortunately.
But if you spend, despite that, if you spend enough time on Reddit, it seems like every guy out there just wants to go to Valhalla.
That's also a thing. I don't know why it's a thing, but it is a thing. Yeah, you're right. We talk about witches and stuff, and that's kind of a thing. Like the dude equivalent is Valhalla. Like they all just want to kind of do that thing. I don't know. I'm not into that subculture, but it's a thing, I guess. On that note, we do have a super chat. It's from Kelly Laughlin. Kelly, you dog. He gave $2 and he said, I want some truth. So here's a truth for you. Did you know that the Pope can't be an organ donor? There you go. That's a truth for you. So I don't know why. It's just a thing I saw on the internet. So I don't know if it's true or not, but it sounds like it would be true because it's like, yeah, if you're the Pope, like, and you're saying I'm going to donate my organs, like how people would probably try to steal it. Like there'd probably be it'd probably be a big deal. People would try to buy money for it or something. I don't know. Or maybe there's some text about it in the Bible that says you can't be an organ donor. I don't know. I don't think so, but
I have the Pope's gallbladder.
I have the Pope's gallbladder, and it allows me to cast spells. I don't know. That's what I was thinking earlier. Because like, if you get the donation, I made this joke before the show. I feel like you get some sort of ability. Like it's like a Metroid thing. You get an upgrade to your meat suit, and I got the Pope's bladder, and
I can take on Ridley.
I got holy pee. It's like holy water. I don't know. Yeah, I can take on Ridley. Yeah, and I don't know. I feel like that's a thing, but if it's not, it should be. So anyway, that's why he's keeping those organs to himself. But on that note, I need to very quickly say some things here, and one of them is that it's that time of year again, folks. We are excited to announce the Bat Cruise tickets are up for sale. If you like Forrest Valkai and you like J Mike, they are going to be there along with other hosts, including myself. So if you want to come hang out with us, August 16th, 2025, get your tickets at tiny.cc/backcruise, and they sell out fast. So look it up, see what it's about, get interested, because I'd love to meet you in person. And on that note, if you want to support the show but you can't come to Austin, hey, we do have some merch, tiny.cc/merch ACA, for t-shirts, hoodies, mugs, hats, and all kinds of stuff. And of course, I already mentioned our super chat challenge today as well. So if you have a super chat and you want to get that done, we will do that, which we have another one, by the way. It is from was it Free Jemmy? Am I mispronouncing that? And they said, hey, Dan and JL, just checking in if JL ever got a chance to read Origin of Consciousness I sent you. So someone's following up. JL. What's up with that?
So to answer the question, still working through it, very, very busy, and it's a pretty involved text, and I want to make sure that I understand it. So I have not finished it yet, not to mention with all my writing, I'm really, really busy. But I still have it. It is dog-eared on my shelf. So when I get the opportunity, like I said, it's an involved text. So, but I'm getting there.
All right.
So, and the random fact, or random truth, as Kelly would prefer, wombats are the only species that poop in cubes.
Yes, I've heard that before, which I've never seen it, and I don't want to look it up, but I'm going to just believe it. That's one of those things where it's like, yeah, I'm trusting you on that one. But great random fact. Good pick. And I like how somebody's kind of collecting on their book via super chat. That is a new one, I gotta say. I don't think that's happened on the show before. But thank you for the $5. Really appreciate it.
And thank you again for the book. I do appreciate it. So
yeah, sounds like you're getting some cool books there. So that's good. So one other way, of course, supporting the channel is hitting that join button below the video. It gives you access to the special chat emojis and early access to our YouTube shorts and clips. And last but not least, I need to thank the amazing, wonderful, stupendous, spectacular crew that help make this show happen every single week. There's our boys. They're hanging out. They're doing some good stuff. Shout outs to all of our crew, the gang, the squad, the fam, lots of folks. Oh, they're doing like a Brady Bunch thing right now. They're pointing at each other. If you're listening on audio, it's kind of it's a thing. So, wow, this is great. This is a long time on the crew camp. We don't spend this long at the crew camp. There we go. Okay, great. Thanks for that, crew. And thank you to everybody that supports the show, of course. You guys are all amazing for that. And with that, let's get to our next caller, shall we?
All right.
We have Al calling in from California, wanting to know, is truth really wanted? Is this a challenge, Al? What are you challenging us on this? What do you got?
Actually, what happened was I just recently watched a movie, The Man Who Killed Don Quixote. And at the end of the movie, it just reminds me of the whole thing, because the whole thing is about the allegory of the cave. And I mean, you don't need any other movies. they're everywhere, right? The Matrix, all of them. But it just made me think, is truth really wanted?
Do you mean by people in general, like just society or human beings, or what?
I mean, by any individual by themselves. It's like, I've watched Matt say, I want to know the most truths and something like that. I don't know. Who knows what he really says? But the real thing is, I don't know if that's really true, that everybody really wants to know the most truths. I
can say for myself. I can say, sorry to interrupt. I can say for myself, yes. Yes, I want to know them. To parrot him, I want to know more true things and false things. But yes, if there is a true proposition about reality, then yes, I want to know that. The reasoning for that is that the more true things that I know, the better that I can comport myself within this universe that I perceive that I am in. So if I want to increase my chances of survival, if I want to increase my chances of health and happiness, knowing true things, knowing the difference between what is true and what is false is very, very important. If I can comport myself in a rational manner, then I improve pretty much everything about myself. I can make rational, more informed decisions about everything that I do. So yes, knowing true things is paramount. At least I can speak for myself, is paramount to me. But
see, now I'm going to play devil's advocate, because philosopher Alvin Plantinga points out that... Oh, was that a bullshit sneeze? Was that is that what's happening here?
I'm just no. Go ahead. I'm just not a
Okay,
fan. I have my own opinions on planting. I have my own opinions on planting.
I want to hear your opinions. I'm not advocating for this. I'm just spitballing. That look, we don't actually need truth in order to survive, right? If there's a lion in a bush, right, and the bush rumbles, we don't need to see the lion to necessarily, know that there's something there. If we see the grass rustle, we're gonna run away, right? We don't know if the lion is actually there in the grass, right? So he uses this analogy to kind of say, well, look, truth isn't actually contingent on our survival. It's just that we can have corollary mechanisms basically in our evolutionary history that can cause us to survive better, that don't actually reflect reality, that just act as a means of our self propagation rather. And so I think it's an interesting critique, but obviously you have some thoughts.
I'm not a fan. Okay, number one, I'm not a fan of Plantinga, and I've never been a fan of his, predominantly because of his response to the logical problem of evil. He just wanted to redefine terms in order to try and fit his God through that keyhole. It was very, very intellectually dishonest. But in his response to that, in regards to truth, yes, it's true that we do observe that evolution does not have like a specific version of an end game in mind. So it's not like trying to create specific entities. That entities evolve in response to their environments, to put it very, very simply. But evolution in a way does truth track. And the way it does that is by producing organisms that have the ability to function within their environments by recognizing the things by recognizing the reality for or what's around them for what it is. Individuals that can recognize how far things are away from them. They can recognize not to step off that cliff, not to do certain things. Yes, type 1 and type 2 errors do play into it, and those aren't necessarily true. These are just, like our ability to infer things, but it does to a degree truth track, because if you absolutely, as an organism, were unable to discern truth through your senses to any degree, you would not survive long on this planet, especially 100,000, 150,000, 200,000 years ago. Our species wouldn't be able to do that. Okay, those telling where things are, understanding the relationships between things, the true relationships between things. How far is it to the next water hole? If I go after this animal, will I be too far to make it back to the water hole in time? So I don't die of dehydration. Understanding these truths is important, and our senses allow us to do that to a degree. So yes, evolution in a way does truth track, and the problem is Plantinga has a personal issue with evolution in and of itself and what is entailed from that, because he finds it to be incompatible with his God concept, and so he will reduce it as much as possible to try and get it out of the equation, and he simply can't do it. I don't like his intellectual dishonesty. That's just me.
Take that, Alvin Plantinga. Yeah, shutting it down. No, I agree with you. Absolutely. I mean, yeah, I'm just, again, playing devil's advocate here. But yeah, I think it's an interesting, at least, sort of thought to bring up, because I have met people who have undergone psychosis. I've met people who don't have the same view of reality than I do. And what human beings are built for all kinds of psychological situations. And there's a lot of people that just live their life and don't need to necessarily know the truth about, well, the things I care about, at least, right? So there is something to be said about that. I think there is something to be said about people who just kind of don't care, who are more interested in getting advancement at their job than they are about the way the world works. Or not saying that that's not a thing that people shouldn't be interested in, but there's something about people that aren't curious about the world. I'll tell you this story. There's a guy at my work. We try to play this game about Wikipedia. The game where it's you jump on a random article and you try to get to another article on Wikipedia in the shortest amount of clicks. Okay. The guy two guys at my work did not know how to use Wikipedia. They just never went there, never been there. And they're not that, 10, 20 years older than me. Right. Where it's you're on the internet. We work at a job where it involves computers and stuff. It's I can't fathom, never going to Wikipedia. How could you never, ever be curious about something? And I was trying to judge him in that moment, but it's just there are some people that just aren't curious about these kinds of things. And I have to remember that, I don't know. It's not a shameful thing, but it does make me wonder. It does make me wonder, right? So I don't know. That's a lot of thoughts from us, Al. What do you think?
Well, first of all, I think you took me down a ride I wasn't going on, but that's okay. I'll further the further discussion. I think that actually had a correspondence with you, but you didn't respond. But it was about factual belief. See, when you have a factual belief, then you believe things, and then your beliefs can change because facts change. And every time facts change, you have a new belief. Mm-hmm. But when you have truth, you don't change your belief because you only change your vision of truth. So the question is not really true truth. It's just truth as a common person uses it. It's not factual belief. It's true belief. I mean, it's because I have fact-based beliefs. So when I come up against facts, I have to change my beliefs. But truth is different. And we always use, the matrix, like take the pill and you'll know the truth. It's like an adventure. That's always the go-to for the, simulation to the Algorian cave. But if you think about it, another pop culture thing is like Total Recall. I don't know if you're familiar with that as well. As
Yep.
I know you've probably seen it. But in Total Recall, he meets himself and he says, "Hey, you got to come back." And then he says, "I'm not coming back," because he'd rather live in a simulation because that's what comforts him. So it's like this, Dan. You told me to call you. Your 7 years is up, and now I'm checking on you. I know you don't know what's going on, but you're in a simulation. I need to take you back. Do you want to go, or do you want to stay in your simulation right now?
Okay, Al, you really scared me for a second. You were doing a bit there. I thought you were like somebody I knew in real life and was like, "Oh, I'm here to take you back." Like, "Oh, Jesus." Okay, that got real weird for a second. I was not comfortable, but I get what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, man.
When you're thinking of the Matrix, you're like, "Oh, there's an adventure. I don't know what there is." But now you're like, "Do I really want to give up my family? Do I really want to have a child? I have these people. I have."
No, and see, actually, Al, this is where I kind of agree with you because, I don't think everybody wants obviously, not everybody wants the truth. But, okay, here's a hot take. Does everybody need the truth? Okay, because there are some truths that might be too much or too hard for people to bear. Maybe it is easier or better for people to live their life in ignorance of certain things. I'll give you an example. If you have a family member that died in a gruesome death, do you need to read the autopsy report on exactly how somebody died? Is that going to make your life better? Is that going to give you a peace? Yeah, that's a kind of truth, right? But would I tell a victim of violence like that, or someone who knows a victim of violence, hey, you need to know this information? Like, I don't know if it's a necessity. I don't think it's always going to be something that people actually need in every sort of situation. So yeah, I think you can come up with other examples like that where truth maybe isn't actually wanted or needed. But JL looks like he's about to pop out of his seat. What do you got?
No, I agree with you to a degree on that. It really comes down to the individual, and I'm never going to be one to indicate what. I'm very much an advocate for for knowing the truth. You brought up the kind of macabre example of reading the autopsy report. I did after my father passed away because I'm pathological to the degree that I want to know, because for me, and with my kind of like my personal paradigm, the more I know, the less the unknown controls me. That if I know these things and I can set them down, it's like, these are the facts of the matter, and then the less my brain is going to sit there and wonder about these things and extrapolate and try to imagine various scenarios and put my own pieces in there and try to that whole mechanism. All it does is take energy, time, focus away from the things that I need to be doing, the things that I feel I should be doing. And so having that knowledge, knowing what is true, what in my worldview, what is probabilistically true, given the evidence that we have available to us, allows us to not be controlled by that which we do not know and by that which we do not understand. We improve our understanding all the time, which is why, for me, knowing what is true is paramount. Okay. And understanding things like the rationality, the logical consistency, the justification behind these claims, because when we know that, when we can confirm them, then we can know them. When they comport with reality, they correspond to reality, they're logically consistent with other statements, then we know that we're onto something. And the less that will control us, okay, because we'll know what decisions we need to make in reference to those particular statements, which is why it's so important for me. But like I said, to each their own. Each individual comes at this in their own way, okay? And for them to figure that out on their own. I don't think anybody can be told how to come to truth. They must be able to at least be educated enough to figure it out themselves, what their philosophy of truth is, how to understand logical consistency, how to derive these things through independent confirmation and not just relying upon their own biases, what they hope or what they desire or dream of being true, but what is actually true.
Interesting. That's a great answer, JL. You're giving me some pause here on this, because your approach to the world is that when you have knowledge, you have control. You're like a Gnostic hero. You're like your pursuit of knowledge is what gives you that sense of control. Do you think that confidence could backfire though? Because I mean, there's definitely people who think that they absolutely know what the fuck they're talking about, and definitely don't, right?
Yes, and I would fully agree that yes, it could, like, I guess for some individuals, such a mentality could lend themselves to that hubris. It could be like, well, I understand everything, so they could then, to put it in the pop culture terms, you become the Lex Luthor or whatever, and that you think you know everything or so much that and I get that. I tried to, my philosophy of truth, and it's just mine, just what I've developed over time, is that I take most people on this planet are, they adhere to correspondence theory of truth. That which is true is that which corresponds to reality. I go a little bit further by pillaring that correspondence theory upon coherentism and pragmatism, because I find that understanding what corresponds with reality and understanding how it's logically consistent with other statements made about reality, but keeping myself open to the most parsimonious conclusions and allowing myself to ask questions, to understand these things, keeps me intellectually honest, which is why on my channel, not to shamelessly plug here, but intellectual honesty is so vitally important to me, is because we must be willing to state that we don't know, because stating that we don't know is not a weakness, it is a position of strength, because it gives you the opportunity to learn more about a subject. Assuming that you already know it, okay, and I don't want to get into the whole like Dunning-Kruger thing, but you automatically may be leaving things on the table, okay? That's stuff that you don't know, okay, that may have an effect later on, that can, in a way, affect your behavior or control your behavior or the way you think about things when you least expect it. So that's why it's so important to keep yourself open, to keep yourself honest, and to keep searching and to keep asking questions. Never be afraid to ask questions in that respect, which is what I try to maintain in my worldview.
Ooh, audio listeners, I'm giving a golf clap for that one. Well said, well spoken. I like that answer. Al, what do you think?
Well, I think that he thinks that, but I don't think he believes. I think he doesn't really believe that. I think.
Ooh. Okay. Hot take. Whoa. Why is that, Al?
No, I'm going to give you another example. I'm sure that both of you have people in your family that believe in God.
Yes, I do. Yes.
100%.
It is your responsibility to tell them the truth, because truth is absolute. So and if it was, then you would.
Is it my responsibility to what? Tell them that God's not real?
Yes, it's your responsibility to tell them the truth.
Okay, well, go ahead, Dan, because I may get a little.
Yes, truth is one.
Well, you sound like you got something, or do you need to think?
Okay, so no, here's the. I was gonna let you jump in. It's your show. I don't want to sit here and dominate, but
I'm good.
Okay, so Al, here's the big thing. Yes, I do have devout people in my family. My mother is a devout believer. I love my mother very much. I unfortunately have not spoken with my mother in several years, and the reason for that is because she and I had a falling out over me addressing her lack of logical consistency and her irrationality in a particular setting. We were talking on the phone, it turned into a thing, and we haven't spoken since. It's an unfortunate thing. I know that the door swings both ways on this, okay, but I'm as stubborn as my mother is. We'll figure out eventually, maybe one day. But nonetheless, yes, okay. The problem is, in short answer, the problem is the answer is yes. Yes, we tell people the things that are true as long as that we can back them up. Not what I feel is true, but what we know, what we can confirm that we know to be true. The problem is that you're talking about God concepts. Okay, God concepts in and of themselves, no matter which one you're addressing, are going to be unfalsifiable unless you can demonstrate that the God exists independently of mind and context without begging the question. All right? Because that can't be done. My mother can say she believes in a God all day long. She can claim that she knows she does, but she doesn't actually know that. It doesn't qualify as knowledge. It qualifies as belief, which is why her position is faith-based. I can't sit there and tell her that a God doesn't exist, because a classical deity, like a deity, could exist, a creating entity that, created the universe and then pissed off and no evidence left of its existence. Sure, there's a logical possibility there. But I can tell her that the God that she believes in, by virtue of how she defines it, is logically contradictory and therefore doesn't exist. So I can explain that to her, which I have in the past. Okay? So now I myself am different. I mean, I may be different from other people. Personal relationships in and of themselves are important to me, but it's more important to me that the people in my life know that I will always be honest with them. Okay? I always will be. Lies, half-truths, half measures, whatever, okay, it's been my experience, will always come back to bite us. Okay. Now, I don't consider myself a proponent of radical honesty, but I am honest. But I don't. But maybe it makes me a social pariah on occasion. I honestly don't care because I go for the truth. But yes, okay, the truth is that paramount. At least it is. I can say that for me. I don't know why you would think that I don't believe that. Okay. Obviously, I can't demonstrate to you, like my beliefs in there, but I can tell you that is a paramount thing in my worldview. And my worldview supports it.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
I'm sorry.
You're good.
Yes.
A lot of things to think about here.
My response would be, I don't go around. Earlier, his name was JL. I'm not watching it on television, so I didn't get proper introductions. I believe his name was JL. JL said he gave a list of what's important and how he comes up with truth, but he had pragmatics in there, which is not true. Pragmatics is a usefulness.
Right. No, those three things, Al, the three things I mentioned, correspondence, coherentism, and pragmatism, neither one of those alone will get you to the truth. They won't. But the three of them working in conjunction maintain intellectual honesty and establish that we don't know everything. It's possible that we will never know everything, but we can know some things to a probabilistic degree that it would be irrational to doubt them unless we were presented evidence that would warrant that doubt. That's the key right there. Those three things working, those are the three things I found working in conjunction are what keep me on what I would call my path. Okay, or keep my worldview logically consistent without me flying off the heels and just walking in every room like, ha, your God doesn't exist. It was just not something that I do sometimes. But nonetheless, that's the way I comport myself. You're right. Not one of them, those things alone won't get you there. All three working together will, or at least, for me, they do.
Well, the pragmatism is why you don't do that. You don't go around telling people that tell children that Santa Claus is not real, and you just don't do that because it's not pragmatic. So you just and that's
it's more than just pragmatism. I think
truth is not real.
Okay, no, you're thinking about pragmatic. I think you're thinking about pragmatic in the wrong way. As far as like social situations go, but we're talking about like the pragmatic theory of truth, like correspondence theory of truth, coherent theory of truth, and then pragmatic. There's also like semantic and there's one that's rhetorical, semantic and rhetorical, the five theories of truth, and so. I get what you're talking about pragmatism as far as like a utility in a particular social situation. Like it would not be pragmatic for me to go about like messing up other people's days, but that's not the same thing when it comes to discussing what is truth. Okay, well, truth in that is that which has utility, as in it corresponds and correlates with other statements about reality, and is the most parsimonious, that it requires the fewest number of assumptions for us to get to that conclusion. So that's what keeps me there, and also knowing that I don't know everything, that we can continue asking questions. Okay, in order to get to that conclusion. That's what pragmatism would get you to. Okay, the rhetoric on that. So. To the same word, two different contextual applications.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And I want to bring up something too.
I'm not familiar with.
Yeah, he's right from my understanding. I'm also a layman, but I co-sign on his understandings of major theories of truth. But one thing I think too, right? You're talking about this example of, we don't go around telling children Santa Claus isn't real, and we're not talking to our parents all the time about how God isn't real and stuff, right? Because I say this all the time on this show. You can be right and you can be convincing, but those are two different things, right? So like psychology plays a part in this. If everybody in the world was like JL, this show wouldn't exist. We wouldn't need it. Everybody would be doing just fine in the truth department. Okay. But everybody in the world is not like JL. We have varying personalities of all kinds, and background experiences are going to be a big part of why you understand certain truth. Your ethnography in general, right? Like there's going to be cultural ideas that affect you in ways that are going to be imperceptible to us as well. I'm not just saying this as, a guy who thinks he knows everything. I'm saying I have my own biases too. The point is, people receive ideas differently. And if you receive ideas differently, then how you convey truth is going to affect how somebody accepts a truth, right? So does that kind of fall into this idea that truth is sort of semantic? In a way, possibly, but more importantly, right, even if there is this idea of objective truth out there, the transmission of that idea is going to be affected by how people receive that transmission. If it's not in a format that people can understand or accept, it's just not going to be that way. And for many of us, our own families struggle with that because it's just harder to talk to your families than it is to talk to strangers on the internet. I don't know why. That's just how it is for me, at least. Maybe that's true for JL too, but it's just the world we live in. But I don't know, Al, what do you think?
I think it's easier to talk to people on the internet because you have the mute button. But,
that's also true. That's also true.
This is true.
Not gonna lie, that's a good point, Al. And I can turn off from this conversation, right? My family's not gonna stop being my family just because I have a disagreement with them, for better or worse, right? So it does make it a bit more challenging.
But the point I was getting, it's not that I struggle with the truth. It's just something I think about because I'm like, the thing from the Matrix makes you think like this truth is an adventure. But when you're like, I'm very familiar with where I'm at, and it doesn't just matter that one. It doesn't matter about the Total Recall, just when everybody knows. But you can go to any pop show that's old because it's an old tale, the allegory of the cave. But
no, go ahead.
When you're doing it, what's most familiar is what you're always going to choose. I think you're not going to choose what's not familiar.
You're hitting on something really deeply culturally necessary right now. How many folks, it's been polled that like Andrew Tate is like one of the most popular figures amongst like Gen Z, right? That was true a couple of years ago. I don't know if it's true like in 2025, but it's like, and what's one of his big things? Talking about the red pill, talking about the Matrix, talking about how he has this sort of esoteric knowledge that only people who follow him know and who are cool and are hot and funny and rich. And it's like, that is intoxicating to people. This idea that they have a secret truth or a knowledge that the rest of the world just needs to comport to, and that is dangerous. I think there is something about that the pursuit of that does give people into really weird and what we would call false ideas. So it's worth investigating. I think, Al, you shouldn't apologize for anything. This is a great call because this is Truth Wanted, and we want the truth, baby. Boom! Boom!
Hey, Al, you still there? We still got you?
You still have my friend.
Okay, yeah, something that I mentioned earlier when I talked about parsimony. I'm not sure how familiar you are with philosophical razors, but I mentioned. But when I talk about parsimony, I'm talking about Occam's razor, which is not multiplying your entities unnecessarily, which basically translates to not making any more assumptions than is needed. Okay. So, but that's one. Another philosophical razor that I would like to hand you. Are you familiar with Alder's razor at all?
I'm not yet. You tell it to me.
Okay, so Alder's razor is a philosophical razor. It's one of the principles of parsimony in that respect. It's also called Newton's flaming laser sword, for those who are internet savvy, but it's one of my favorites. And it basically states that if a position or a conclusion cannot be determined via experimentation or observation, then it is not worthy of debate. So the idea that unfalsifiable conceptualizations about the world or about reality that can neither be determined, that even if they were true, can never be determined to be true, or at least to our current understanding, we could not figure that out. Like, for example, if you were a Boltzmann brain, a brain in a jar, if say that were the truth, by what mechanism would you be able to determine that that was true? There currently isn't one. So right now, that proposition that you could be being logically possible, but that proposition is we can't determine it. We can't determine it's true or false. But the reality is there's still an experience being had, a la Descartes. Okay, Rene Descartes in that respect. So we can confirm the experience, but the other thing, the superfluous thing is, but you could be a brain in a vat, or you could just be whatever. But you can't. We can't currently determine that. So why would we debate it? Why would we allow ourselves to fall into that rabbit hole? I know for some people it's fun to kind of as far as thought experimentation goes, but when it becomes consuming to the point that we begin to question the most basic things, I feel it can become problematic. So recognizing that there are certain propositions about reality that don't really warrant extreme heavy discussion like that. It's helped it. I give you that. I wanted to inform you about that because it's something that in my kind of philosophical endeavors has helped to keep me sane, because the deeper you go down the philosophy rabbit hole, it can get really, really funky. There's a lot of wild opinions out there. The vast majority of philosophical positions people just hold because they just confirm what they intuit about reality, not because they know what's true. So I find that stick with the basics and recognize that there are some concepts that, while they may be entertaining in the short run, they just don't warrant debate, extensive debate to that degree. So Alder's razor, something that I apply in my life quite a bit.
There you go. With that,
you're done with the conversation, or
no. I'm just saying that when reflecting,
was just a metaphor for real life.
No, I get it. It's just that when one thing I always recommend that people should be able to do is reflect upon their own worldviews. Okay, not just one particular facet of their worldview, but their worldviews in their entirety. So when you do that, look at the things that you hold to as being true, the things that you believe are true, the things that you know that are true. And look at the propositions that you don't know are true, that you want to be true, and then really apply these things. Understand where you're making assumptions you don't need to. Understand where you are debating things or trying to dive into things that are completely indeterminate. These are important things to do when you are assessing your own worldview, which I think everybody should be doing all the time. So it's just a handy tool that helped me that I think could help you.
I don't have a problem with that. Again, I'm a fact-based belief. My belief is fact-based. The facts is not the problem. The problem is truth wanted? That was the question. Is truth wanted? It's even you've heard the phrase. The truth hurts. And then also,
yes, it does.
Confront you with the truth. When somebody confronts you with the truth, how much can you handle?
If you're someone like me, a lot. So
you can handle it, but if they give you the whole load, you can't handle it.
That has to be determined by the individuals. I don't think you could blanket the human species with that statement. There are some people that can handle the truth, some people that can compartmentalize very, very well, some people that they hear the truth and they're like it, and then they just water off a duck's back and it doesn't bother them at all. Some people who will fold. Okay, some people they strengthen, some people they fold. It depends upon the individual, and I would not judge any one particular individual for how they react to learning the truth about things. I just know how I comport myself, and how I strive in this world to understand these things, predominantly so that the unknown doesn't control me, and so that I myself reduce the possibility of me being taken advantage of by charlatans, conmen, and grifters. That's the key for me. Okay. And what's funny is you bring this up, and my mother, actually being a devout believer, was instrumental in my deconstruction and my deconversion, because one of the things that she just, beat into my brother and I, not in an abusive way, but beat into my brother and I, was always ask questions. If something doesn't make sense, do not be afraid to ask. Okay. It doesn't matter who the authority is. If you don't understand it, ask a question. And if they can't answer it, go and find the answer. Find someone who knows it, or find the answer yourself. Okay. Don't just sit there and accept things because people tell them to you. And my mother, just hammered that into my brother and I. All right. And here I am now applying the very thing that she wanted me, because she didn't want us being taken advantage of by the people in this world who were looking to do that, looking to profit off of that, off of our ignorance, okay, or off of our fear. And so here I am now, decades later, and that very mantra got me to where I am today. So.
Yeah, on that note, sorry, folks, computer just crashed. It couldn't handle the amount of truth that was happening in this conversation, and it restarted itself. And I think we have to move on. We've been on this call for a little bit, and there's some other folks in the queue. But Al, I have to say, from what I did here, sorry, I missed that last part. This has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much for calling in. Al. And I hope to talk to you again, because it was really good. I really like it. It's not like that we haven't heard that kind of call before, but it does get to the heart of the matter, doesn't it? Like, why we do what we do. I mean, there are some people that have, the worst people in history oftentimes think that they are the good guys, right? Mm-hmm. Like, so you kind of want to check yourself before you wreck yourself a little bit, right? Like, is it even worth it, the way that we talk about the things that we talk about? Are we actually helping people if we're talking about our version of truth, right? So I don't know. I think it's worth discussing, but good times with that call. On that note, somebody else who has a different opinion about truth and wants to talk to us about it next here is Daniel has spoken from Australia, calling into the show, wanting to know about what my truth is, what would change my position. I'm not sure. Daniel has spoken from Australia. Tell me more about that.
Hey, I would like to, in the world, there's hundreds of opinions. The spectrum is really wide about how people relate to truth, okay? So what I would like to know is, what is your type of truth that is going to convince you or move you to change your position about... Change
my position on what, God?
That you currently don't believe. Sorry?
Or just anything, or what? Like, are we talking about God or what?
Type of truth. Yeah, in relation to God, what is the type of truth that you're looking forward to, or what is the kind of evidence that you're looking forward to change your position about God?
It's a great question. I mean, it depends on the God, right? So different gods have different God claims. So are we talking about an omnipotent, good God of the universe that is kind of outside of us somehow, but can also communicate with us? Or if we're talking about like some more local deities, they might have different claims to their existence, right? Overall, if something exists, they're going to have an effect on the world, right? And I want to be able to see that effect. I know JL exists because he's talking to me, through the computer here. One day that's going to be harder when AI becomes more prevalent and stuff, right? But for now, I'm pretty confident, this is JL talking to me and through me. Not through me, but to me, right? There's some people that say God. There's some people that say God talks through them.
Let's do one at a time. I would like to know what local deity on earth do you find truth in? Like, what local deity do you find is worthy enough to pay attention to?
Well, I don't find any worthy enough to be like pay attention to or think are real. My point was more that.
Why did you even bring it up? What is the point of even bringing
if you
that
let me
up?
finish, I'll tell you the reason why I brought it up is because not everybody thinks of God the same way. Some like when they talk about God being on God's being on Mount Olympus. Mount Olympus is a place, like you can go to it, you can go to the top of it, right? And having it, a lot of Native American cultures have gods that affected their material world and physical geography around them. You see that a lot in different culture stories, right? So there's different gods that have different material effects on the world. In Christianity's case, God comes through us through the Holy Spirit, and through the Holy Spirit, certain acts are done, certain miracles can be performed. That's just an example. There's other things that tie us to God, but that's one that's very clear and one we could examine. But it seems like every time we do examine miracles that allegedly come from God, they seem to fall apart pretty much every single time we look at them. So that's one reason why it makes it hard. If there was like actual miracles that we could verify, perhaps if we actually saw human beings walking on water, for example, I'm not going to say I'm going to be a Christian right there, but it's going to move the needle for me, right? So there's a couple different examples we could go with.
No, you didn't really understand my premise. That's exactly why I asked you, what is your truth? What is your truth that's going to convince you about your previous position, right?
No, you asked me what would convince me of God. That's not
reference to.
No, that's different though, because it depends on the claim. It depends on the God claim. That's my point, right?
Daniel, do you have a specific God in mind that you're talking about? Are you specifically talking about the Christian God, or are you just talking about like a classical deistic entity? Like which one are you actually referring to?
Hello, Daniel, you there?
I did talk to Dan previously.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Dan, go ahead and talk, please.
No, go ahead. He asked you a question.
Yeah, I was asking you a clarifying question.
So what I'm saying is, like, I'm interested actually to know what is your position about the truth or about the kind of evidence that you will be open to and deeming it as worthy enough to engage in and having your position changed on God. So what is the kind of truth or evidence that you're looking forward to?
Well, so one, you kind of didn't listen to JL's question. That's fine, because this was the original. Not saying it's fine. You shouldn't interrupt you, JL. But that is your original question that you're trying to ask us, and we're just gonna have to repeat the point again that like it depends on the claim. It depends on the claim. It really does, and that's it's not a fun answer to hear, but it has to be, because some God claims are different than other kinds of God claims. That's what it is at the end of the day, So you'd have to be more specific.
No, my position is that I'm asking a question to you about knowing your own position about the truth that
and I gave you my position, God, right? And my position is that I need to know more about the specifics.
Market for different sort of gods in the world. What is your own?
Yes.
Daniel, can you hear me?
Hello?
Ozzy.
Hello.
Oi.
Yeah,
yes. Okay. So Dan, so you can hear me. Okay. So this is important.
Yeah.
I have an answer to your question. Okay. You're asking what evidence would I accept that would convince me? All right. So, but what Dan over here is trying to do is he's trying to get more specifics from you, like, because if you're talking about like a classical version of like classical deism. Classical deism is just a nondescript entity that was powerful enough to like kick the football on the universe, and then that's it. And then it left with no evidence of its existence. It doesn't interact with anything. It just made everything. And
the idea of classical deism.
I'm not done. Let him finish, please.
Daniel, I'm not done.
I will mute you unless you let him finish, please. Thank you.
That's an unfalsifiable concept. All right. So obviously the evidence would be different, than say if it was the Christian theistic God, which has a whole bunch of logical entailments that come along with it. All right. So if you're talking about two different categories here, we need to know which category you're referring to so that we can answer honestly and accurately.
The Abrahamic God.
Okay. So the Christian God. Fantastic. So the Christian God is the one you're talking about.
Not the Christian God, the Abrahamic God.
The Christian
You hear me
God is the
correctly?
Abraham.
It's
The
the
Christian
Abrahamic
God
God.
is the Abrahamic God. The Christian God is the Abrahamic God. It's a version of it. Okay, it's not the Muslim one. It's not the Jewish one.
Oh.
But you would talk about, doesn't matter. That particular that Hebrew storm God, whatever. Okay, however you're defining it. The reality is this. That worldview is theistic, meaning that God exists and it interacts directly with everything, with the world in whatever way. If the God is interacting with things, then we would be able to determine that it exists by either detecting indirectly or directly what its actions were. That's important because we need to be able to know what a God action is as opposed to what a God action is not. All right. Otherwise, if we can't tell the difference, then we can't say that the God interacts with anything because they all look naturalistic to us. Okay, we don't want to beg the question here. So if the God does exist and it interacts with the world, then the best evidence that you could give me would be a predictive model that utilizes the God concept in order to make better and more accurate predictions about reality than any of the naturalistic ones that we currently employ.
Right. This is why I said, if people and only Christians were able to have the ability to walk on water, if I tried and I couldn't do it, but Christians were able to do it, there is something happening there, right? There are some variables we can account for and examine. And I'm sure people could come up with better examples. This is just what I'm coming up with on the top of my head. But the point is, I'm exactly in agreement with JL. If you want to know my opinion, yes, the Christian God or the Abrahamic God, both, doesn't matter. Interact with the world, interact with the material world, makes material changes to the world, and therefore can be examined through material processes. You have to, right? If you're seeing something, that's through the material, right? If you're touching something, that's through the material. I want to be able to know that, and that's going to be what would change my mind. Yeah.
Okay, then therefore ask Don about what he has thought about the world history changing prophecy that I discussed with him last week, and what is his opinion now? Has he thought about it now, or is he even considering that to be evidence good enough for him to change his position?
Well, you called me, so I need to give context because people are confused. You called me when I was on Atheist Experience last Sunday, and you brought up the prophecy in Daniel. And you said it was referring to the end of the world. Well, sorry, I disagree with you because you said it wasn't referring to the end of the world. I said that it was, and that's how we know that it's false because the world hasn't ended based on its interpretation. So we just have different interpretations. But yeah, again, biblical prophecy actually, this might surprise you, actually doesn't have anything to do with God in a way, right? Because God is kind of a separate concept from whatever the Bible says. The Bible could be absolutely false, and God could still be real, right? So we have to be able to evaluate God separately than what prophets claim in the Bible. That's that's kind of a different thing.
God.
He claims to be the prophet of God, sure.
Daniel, the figure of Daniel, is considered to be a prophet of God in the Bible.
He's considered to be a prophet of God. That's the claim.
Okay, so he had something to say. He had something to say to the king of Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar. He interpreted the dream for him, right? And this dream is a world history-changing event.
No, it's not. It was no way. Hang on a second. The dream that he was interpreting, he interpreted in the context of the time period that they were living in.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. The different entities that were applied to the different creatures that appeared in that dream, okay, all represented things that they were currently aware of. Yeah. All right. But ultimately, the prophecy did not come true. That prophetic dream didn't happen. So therefore, Christians now go back and they look at that and they try to reinterpret that to fit whatever situation is going on currently in the world. It's like, oh, it didn't mean Rome because they on their standard was an eagle. It meant America because our standard is an eagle. No, because it meant like, the H-man's army, like whatever. People have been doing this for centuries. Yeah. Okay. Trying to reevaluate the things that didn't come true to fit them to the time periods in which they live in order to continue or justifying believing that they will happen.
Yep.
You have to become very specific, okay? I ask you to become very specific. Go to the dream interpretation that Daniel makes to the king of Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar.
Yeah, it was the statue with the multiple different types in the feet. Yes,
I'm very specific. I'm very specific. Where Prophet Daniel interprets the dream of the king of Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar. Okay, just focus on that bit. Focus on that passage and tell me how does God of the heaven is not involved in bringing about the changes that he so desires to see on the face of the earth.
Okay, okay, that's a claim. That's a claim that can't be verified. So the Bible is telling you a story about a person who was claimed to be a prophet interpreting a dream of a king who lived at the time. All right, that person could have literally just been interpreting a dream the way they thought. All right. If the individual Daniel existed as depicted, and they believed that the God existed, and they were a faithful individual to that religion, and then they were interpreting the dream in a very specific way to Nebuchadnezzar, it doesn't mean say that event actually took place. It doesn't mean the God exists. Okay. It doesn't mean that the God exists as David believes it does. All right. Or Daniel believes it does. So the problem with this is that there's a whole bunch of assumptions that you're making here. All right.
Comes true.
But it didn't come true. But it didn't come true. That's the problem.
I argued with you on Sunday. I don't think the prophecy actually came true. Do you know why? Because the prophecy says the end of the world happens, and the world's still here. That's what they like. You know,
you have a very wrong understanding of the prophecy. You got to open the Bible and
of course.
read the prophecy for yourself.
No, we always.
And it is not an apocalyptic prophecy. It is not apocalypse, guys.
But it is. It
is apocalyptic. It is apocalyptic because the revelation of John actually harkens back to it. Okay, those ideas spread. All right, they were just changed over time between the decades when these books were written. All right, so no. You have to look at the historical context and the time and place at which that dream was interpreted, which the story was being told. All right. When that particular event did not take place, when what was happening, what was predicted to happen, or prophesied to happen, however you want to say it, didn't take place, Christians have gone back to that text and attempted to reinterpret it. Well, if it didn't happen then, that's why you now have people nowadays in contemporary society interpreting that dream to reference the nations that exist today. I can guarantee you, dude, Daniel was not talking about the United States of America, Russia, Iran, or any other country out there that exists now. They were talking about organizations, governments and countries that existed then.
You're right. I agree with you. Okay. I agree with you. So what I'm saying, what I'm trying to say is that particular dream talked about a particular string of events that were predicted to happen, and they were realized. So as per the dream, Babylonian Empire was to be replaced by the silver-chested empire. So whichever empire replaced Babylon, that became the silver-chested empire. So it was in history. If you see, the Persians became the silver-chested empire,
but you see how not specific that is, though. Like any empires rise and fall all the time in history. Like the interpretations of who actually is the different metals, like in there, is an after the fact, post hoc justification for these. It shouldn't be convincing to you to think that everything is real and God is real and all these other stuff.
What I recommend is you need more time to delve into this prophecy and to figure out.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Well, I recommend that you go look at what Bible scholars have said about this work and understand that Daniel is a post-Babylonic text, meaning it is post the occupation of Babylon. There are later interpretations of that text that are filled into the story because it made sense to the people at the time, right? And this is true for not just Daniel, but in other parts of the Bible. It doesn't demonstrate any future predictive abilities really at all. All it says is what people thought about these civilizations at the time of the writing. Okay.
Well, and Daniel, I just want to throw in there real quick. Okay. When I mentioned a predictive model, Okay, you going back to a story that was written centuries ago, millennia ago, is not going to be a predictive model. Okay, because the only way we can interpret that is through we'd literally be doing the fallacy of post-diction on this one. It's nothing but post and ad hoc rationalizations. There's no way to interpret that in exactly the way, because we don't have access to Daniel. Okay, he's not here to talk about it or this. So, if, like I said, the evidence that I would accept would be a predictive model that yields new information about reality that incorporates the God concept into it. Okay, yeah. That's the evidence that I would, because that would at least tell us, at minimum, that there is something interacting with the world in at least an indirect way.
Right. If we're talking about prophecy, we might as well be arguing about poetry. Like, it's just going to be subjective interpretations all day, every day. That's not good enough for a God belief. We need more than that.
Okay, now this is where I'm getting at. So what is that exactly? What more do you need? What is the type of evidence that you would go on to consider to change your position?
I just gave it to you.
Yeah, we already answered this.
I just gave it to you.
It has to be predictable, has to be more objective than prophecy. Good God. I mean, or at least if it's going to be a future predictive event, I mean, he's already, Jay already talked about this. It has to be specific, right? There has to be a much more specific language there. And also, we can't talk about, it has to be something new. It has to be something that we can actually see the before and after for, not just the after, which is what we're always going to be doing when we look at the Bible.
It's also really important to remember that a lot of problems with the Bible and the biblical prophecies, I hate using the air quotes, is that most of it is post-diction, is that you had individuals who were alive at the time who were well aware of the prophecies that were made by people, decades or centuries before them. And then there were individuals that took steps to bring those things about. Okay, if someone lays down what they call a prophecy, they prophesize something's going to happen, and then that information gets passed along through the generations till one person comes along in that group and they see it and say, I want this to happen because the outcome of this would be great. I want to see this outcome. And then they actively take steps to make it come true. It automatically eliminates that as prophecy.
Dreams are interpreting dreams is like the worst way to do that too, by the way.
I'm asking you to give. What is your type of truth? What is your type of evidence that is going to?
We gave it to you. We answered that.
I already answered that. Show me a Christian who can walk on water, and that'll move the needle for me at least.
Novel testable predictions, bud. Yeah. You give me a predictive model that can make better and more accurate predictions about reality, utilizing the God information. Plug the God concept into any predictive model and have it make better, more accurate, more far-reaching, and to yield new information. Okay, that's what a novel prediction is. Plug that in. Give me that predictive model.
If a Christian prays for me and I don't have to wear contacts anymore because my vision's perfectly clear, that'll do something for me. If you're looking for big tangible stuff like that, sure, that would move it.
As soon as they landed on, the people of Moses who saw the Gulf of Aqaba split.
According to the story.
I know a story. Yes, it's a story.
As soon as they crossed, they sinned against God. They worshipped the cat.
Yeah. And there's another text extra biblical from Daniel where Daniel talks to a dragon. Did you know that?
So how is it going to help you, man? I mean, even
Daniel, you've got to listen. You got to actively listen there, dude. I'm not trying to disparage you, man, but you've got to actively listen. We've answered your question a number of times. Both Dan and I, I'm not done. Dan and I have both answered your question. You continuously appealing back to the Bible is not going to further this conversation because you're talking about stories that that you're interpreting in a specific way that sometimes, the way I've heard, biblical scholarship does not agree with you. So in that respect, don't keep going to the Bible because the Bible is just a bunch of stories. Okay, if the God exists, the Bible can be wrong. So the thing of contention here is, does the God exist? What would convince us? I can guarantee you, dude, I'm telling you right now, the Bible is not going to convince us because the Bible was the number one instrument as to why I am currently an atheist. Because the Bible is, for lack of a better term, a shit book. Okay, so if you give us that novel, that predictive model that elicits new information, novel testable predictions about reality, utilizing the God information, I will at least be able to then confirm that the thing exists or something exists that is interacting with the world in a way that allows us to understand reality better. That is the evidence that you were asking for.
Yep.
Okay.
Unmuting you there now, Daniel. Go ahead.
You talk so enormously, man. I mean, you're talking a lot. Okay, now listen to me.
Well, I scored high on my verbal, so what do you want?
Anthropological evidence. There is anthropological evidence across.
There's anthropological evidence. There's anthropological. Sorry, Daniel. There's anthropological evidence. No. There's anthropological evidence that there are people who believed these things.
Yes.
That does not get you to a God.
Yep.
I want to hijack this. If you let me finish. Let me finish.
That's hilarious because you've been interrupting us this entire converson. But yeah,
no, you're the one who's hijacking the whole conversation, talking endlessly.
Yeah, it's my show, dude. I can do what I want. But also, listen, like I already talked to you about this. I don't owe you anything. Right? Like we've already given you an explanation. Everything at this point is just like whatever you're coming up with right now. And I don't know if I'm interested in it, honestly. Like we've given you examples. You don't seem interested in those examples. You want to keep pushing your examples because you think your examples are really good and we think they're really shit. So like, what else can we get from here? Right?
But you wanted me to you dragged me into the Bible. I asked you one simple question. I asked you, what is your type of evidence? What is your type of truth that is going to convince you and persuade you?
This is how I know you're not listening. This is how I know you're not listening. I am interrupting you. And here's why. We literally just said to take the Bible out. We said the exact opposite of what you're talking about right now. We rip up the Bible. It doesn't matter. The Bible's not the only book that's ever made claims about God. There's all kinds of things out there that have made claims about God. God should be separate from the Bible. We can talk about God and what he's done without ever looking at it, right? And that's what we should be able to do if we want to know that a God exists. We have to be able to test him, or at least test the claims about him, right? Outside of what people have written about him 2,000 years ago.
Anthropological evidence. What do you have to say about the anthropological evidence that's there in humanities? What is your objection to that?
I think the anthropological evidence suggests that the God of the Bible is the result of early Canaanite tribes who believed in multiple gods, right? Not just one single God, but Yahweh was singled out after a number of period of years, his wife was Asherah, right? Who also gets incorporated in the Bible in weird ways. It eventually turned into a monotheistic religion. I actually think that's what anthropology says, by and large, about the history of the Abrahamic God. What do you think it says?
No, that's there in the world, like among all the communities, like ancient communities, like communities that lived in Amazon forest or in Australia, everybody seemed to have a relationship with the agency and the creator.
Oh, hey, actually, I'm going to stop you again because that actually is evidence to our point that none of them have ever said Jesus, have they? Or Yahweh, right? The Aborigines didn't know Christianity, neither did the Amazonians. If anything, that lends credence to the idea that God is a local deity, a local belief constrained to time and place, right? Not omniscient, not everywhere. It's just, you are absolutely proving my own point here.
God of the Bible now, just because you insisted. So let's talk about the anthropology across the globe.
Hey, I don't think you actually give a shit about what I'm saying. So I think I'm just going to end this call here, honestly. Really getting tired of this. We're not, like, your name is Daniel Has Spoken. You want to talk about prophecies from the Bible, and then you get mad that we brought up the Bible, even when we said we don't need to bring the Bible into this. So I don't know what you want. I don't know what you want. But that's it. I don't know. We're done with that call.
Question was asked and answered. It was multiple times. Yeah,
asked, answered, and dealt with. Like I don't know, man. You just want to argue with us. If you want to prove us wrong, I don't know. Do a better job of it. Come more prepared. Like you just want to say your thing, and I don't know. Anyway, I you know what I forgot to do is I forgot that we had some super chats, and I meant to read them before, and I got distracted by my own technical issues. So let's get to some of those super chats real quick. We have one from Phil Honig, who gave $5 and said, a fact for you. The original Alien was highly influenced by the movie Dark Star, where the invading alien was a beach ball with feet. Is that true? Do you know? But I know you would know this better than I would.
The Ridley Scott's idea was influenced. There was influence there, yes.
Okay. All right. Well, there you go. So I got to give my fact in return. And the one I have is Queen lead singer Freddie Mercury was born with 4 extra teeth in his upper jaw, which was what gave him his distinct smile. So that's a fun fact. Yeah, we all love Freddie Mercury, right? Anyway, another super chat comes from Blind Blimey, who says, if I were in A Few Good Men, I'd be telling Jack Nicholson he was probably wise to be skeptical of my truth handling capabilities. Great point there. Thank you for the $5, Blind Blimey. And that goes to you, JL. You got another fact?
Random fact or random truth. The Eiffel Tower can be up to 15 centimeters taller in the summer.
Ooh. I didn't know that. Wait, is that because like the expansion of the metal?
Thermal expansion.
Yeah, that makes sense. 15. Wow, that's kind of big. Another one from Blind Libby, who gave another $5 and said, steps to salvation, pray hard, pray hard too, pray harder, pray hard with a vengeance. So thank you for that, Blind Libby. That was great. Did you know that the average golf ball has 336 dimples? I also didn't know that that's what they were called, dimples, which makes sense. I wouldn't have thought of that, but yeah, that's cool. Golf facts, huh? Anyway, folks, I had a great time with JL Warren today. Happy to have him back on the program. Thanks, JL, for coming back on. Really appreciate talking to you.
Absolutely. I hope I didn't steamroll or like that. I can get going at a clip, and so I try to.
What? We'll see what the comments have to say, because I think you had a pretty positive reception last time. We'll see if people say the same thing. No, it was great talking to you. Obviously, love hearing your thoughts, and I think again you just give some really good and elaborate perspectives, and I just appreciate the conversation. So if people want to see more of your stuff, where should they go?
Yes, check out if you like my content, or if you like this kind of content and you like the stuff that I do, like kind of addressing these philosophical, scientific, or whatever topics, feel free to check out my channel. It's on YouTube, youtube.com/JLWarren. The channel is called Bridge the Divide, where I tackle irrational ideas, the irrational behaviors that often follow, and how with education, rationality, and reason, we can bridge the societal divides that they create.
Yeah, and bonus question. Thank you for that. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your thing there. I was going to say, bonus question. Does JL Warren look like Dan Olson from Folding Ideas? Because I think he kind of does. And you didn't know who that was before today. But you know what? I just want to know if other people agree with me. Kelly's like, maybe. But Kelly, I don't know. Speaking of Kelly, let's bring Kelly back up here to talk about our question again. Thanks for backing up for a second there, Kelly, or at least I don't know if you actually did back up. I don't know what happened while I was
didn't know. I just kind of waited and you came right back. So.
Okay, great.
So the crew did a great job of
yes. Shout outs to the crew for handling it. That's why backups are a thing. So Kelly, what's our question this week again?
Question this week again is, what should the title of Jesus's autobiography be? Wrong answers only. See, that was wrong. That was the problem with my answer earlier. It was the right answer.
Yeah, I want to hear the right answers too. I want to hear both sides on this one. Yeah, why not? I think.
Why not?
But yeah, leave your comment below, and be sure to like and subscribe and do all the YouTuber things. Of course, want to thank everybody who supported the show today, and thanks for everybody for watching. I hope you had a great time. This has been another episode of Truth Wanted. Remember to always keep wanting the truth, and I'll see you next time.
Watch the non-profits and join the hosts in the live chat. Visit tiny.cc/YTNP.